My mother raised her glass like she was blessing a kingdom. To our golden boy, she said, her voice sweet enough to rot teeth. And to his sister, who will buy him the BMW he deserves. Laughter burst across the backyard like fireworks. Caleb smirked. My father nodded in approval. Even the neighbors chuckled, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. It hit me before the glass even touched the table. Sharp, humiliating, familiar. The kind of sting I'd spent years swallowing. For a moment I froze, smile suspended on my lips like a mask made of glass. And then something inside me moved. A breath. Crack. A choice. They thought I'd stay quiet because I always had. They were wrong. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. My name is Jenna Rowe, and on the night my family tried to turn me into their personal bank account, I learned exactly how far they were willing to go, and exactly how far I needed to walk away. From the street, our house looked like something out of a glossy home magazine. White siding, perfect hedges, a flag positioned at the perfect angle for photographs. People used to say, "What a lovely family you have." But lovely things can be illusions. And illusions crack if you listen closely enough. My father, Thomas Rowe, ran a construction company and treated human beings the way he treated buildings: follow the blueprint or break. He never shouted. He didn't need to. His control was architectural, precise, the kind that didn't look like control until you tried to move outside the lines. My mother, Marianne, was the decorator of our family illusion. Soft voice. Beautiful smile. Cruelty wrapped in honey. "I only want what's best for you," she'd say right before deciding what that was. And then there was Caleb, my parents' masterpiece. Their legacy. Their golden son. Football trophies. Scholarships. Praise. Everything in that house revolved around him. As for me, well, someone had to hold the spotlight steady while he stood in it. The first crack in the illusion came when my grandfather, Simon Avery, passed away. He left me a personal trust fund. Not millions, nothing dramatic. But enough to build a life. Enough to choose. Enough to be free. Released at 24. Or sooner if I faced hardship. Grandpa had whispered to me once, "Freedom needs a backup plan, Jenna." I hadn't understood it then. I do now. When I was 19 and learned about the trust, my father called it unnecessary. My mother called it confusing. And suddenly everything about me became strategic. Measured. Monitored. By the time I was 22, finishing my creative writing degree and working part-time at the public library, Caleb treated me like I was part of his convenience package. "Jen, grab us some chips," he'd shout. And I'd do it. Quiet was easier than conflict. Peace, even fake peace, felt safer. But everything shifted the week before his birthday. My mother was arranging roses on the dining room table when she said, gently, casually, "You know, Caleb's turning 20 soon. It would mean so much if you used your trust to buy him something special." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. A few days later, I found a glossy brochure on her desk. BMW 3 Series, gift-ready packages. A sticky note with my name on the cover. I confronted her. She smiled. "It's just an idea for family harmony." Harmony. A word she used like perfume. Sweet. Suffocating. That night at dinner my father said, "A car is a symbol, Jenna. Success should stay in the family." Then, placing his fork down, "You'll handle it. That's what responsible daughters do." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. But my grandfather's voice, softer and wiser, echoed in my memory. "If they ever make you choose between peace and dignity, choose dignity. Peace built on obedience isn't peace. It's a cage." The door of that cage was about to open. I just didn't know how violently. The night of Caleb's 20th birthday shimmered with expensive illusions. Golden lights. White tablecloths. Champagne flutes. Neighbors crowding our backyard like it was a charity gala. My mother floated like a queen among her guests. My father stood tall by the grill, the proud patriarch. Caleb soaked in all the attention like sunlight. I stood at the edge of the patio, holding a paper plate I didn't want. Then I heard it. "Jenna," my mother said, tapping her glass. "A toast." Her smile was that dangerous practice curve. "To our golden boy," she said, "and to his sister, who will buy him the BMW he deserves." Laughter erupted. My father nodded. Caleb smirked, and something in me cracked. Quietly. Cleanly. Finally. No. The world went silent. Even the wind stopped. My mother's smile froze. My father's face turned to stone. What did you say? He asked. I'm not using my trust for him, I said. It's mine. The silence thickened, then broke. A flash of white across my cheek. Not a slap. A shock. The kind that rearranges your heartbeat. Gasps. A glass hitting stone. Champagne spilling. Caleb's smirk disappearing. My mother hissed, Smile, Jenna. You're making a scene. I did smile. Just not the way she wanted. Hours later, I woke up in our bed with fluorescent lights buzzing above me and dried blood on my lip. My ribs throbbed. My phone buzzed with messages. 12 calls from my mother. A text from Caleb. You ruined everything. A police officer asked if I felt safe going home. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know what safe meant anymore. As the nurse wheeled me to discharge, a familiar elderly figure stood waiting. Mrs. Ellery, my coworker from the library. Her eyes softened when she saw the bruises. Oh, sweetheart, she said. You don't have to go back there. At the motel she dropped me at, I opened my laptop. I had proof of everything. Every unauthorized transaction from my trust. Vacations. Home renovations. Charity donations that circled back to my father's company. They thought the slap would break me. They didn't realize it would wake me. I emailed everything to the only name that mattered. Mr. Dalton, my grandfather's lawyer. At 3:17 a.m., he replied, Jenna, you did the right thing. Your grandfather prepared for this. Don't go home. My cage had opened, and I was no longer afraid of the light outside it. Part 2. When the blueprints burned. Almost equals 900 words. By the time the sun rose over the motel parking lot, the bruises on my face had turned from red to purple. I stood by the window with a cheap paper cup of coffee in my hands, watching strangers drive to work like the world hadn't shifted on its axis. Inside my inbox, Mr. Dalton's email sat open. Don't go home. His follow-up came an hour later. Your grandfather added a hardship clause. If your safety is threatened by your family, control of the trust transfers to you immediately. I've started the process. Can you meet me this afternoon? I stared at the screen for a long time. All those years they told me Grandpa was old-fashioned, confused, unreasonable. Turns out he was the only one who saw clearly. At noon, I sat across from Mr. Dalton in a small office that smelled like paper and coffee. He was in his 60s, gray hair, kind eyes that didn't flinch when they saw my bruises. Jenna, he said, folding his hands, your grandfather loved you. He anticipated possibilities. Possibilities, I repeated. You mean this? He nodded. We can petition the court to activate the hardship clause and freeze any access your parents have to the trust. But I need you to understand this is not just paperwork. It will make enemies of people who are already hurting you. I thought of my father's hand across my face. My mother's voice saying, Smile, you're making a scene. Caleb's text. You ruined everything. I think, I said quietly, they made themselves my enemies a long time ago. He studied me for a moment, then slid a stack of forms across the desk. Sign here. This begins the transfer. I'll file for a temporary restraining order as well, just in case they decide to discuss it with you in person. My hand trembled as I signed my name. Not from fear. From the weight of what I was choosing. I wasn't just protecting money. I was choosing myself over their comfort for the first time in my life. By late afternoon, the legal machinery was in motion. Trust frozen. Emergency hearing scheduled. Restraining order drafted. You don't have to see them, Mr. Dalton said. We can notify them by certified mail. But I'd spent 22 years letting them speak for me. This time I wanted to be in the room when their blueprint caught fire. No, I said. I want to be there. He raised an eyebrow. You're sure? I nodded. If they're going to look at the person they tried to break, they're going to see that I'm still standing. The next afternoon, our house looked exactly like it had every other day of my life. Manicured lawn, white fence, flags swaying lazily in the breeze. You'd never guess that behind those windows, panic was gnawing at the people who'd always pretended they were untouchable. Mr. Dalton parked at the curb. I sat there for a moment, staring at the front door I'd walked through 1,000 times as a daughter, and not once as an equal. "You ready?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'm going anyway." We walked up the path together. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head, criticizing my posture, my shoes, the way I breathed. I knocked before I could talk myself out of it. The door opened to Marianne's perfectly composed face. For a heartbeat, she didn't recognize what she was seeing. Me standing straight, no apology in my eyes, a lawyer at my side. "Jenna," she breathed, hand flying to her chest. "You should have called." "I did," I said. "You hung up." Thomas appeared behind her, jaw already tight, the air around him sharp. "You caused enough embarrassment at that party. Do you have any idea what people are saying?" For once I didn't flinch. "Probably that you hit your daughter in front of 50 witnesses." His eyes flashed. "Watch your tone." Mr. Dalton stepped forward, calm as stone. "Mr. and Mrs. Rowe, my name is David Dalton. I represent Jenna regarding the Simon Avery Trust." Thomas laughed once, harsh and humorless. "Her trust? We've been managing that since my father-in-law died. This is a family matter, not—" "It stopped being just a family matter," Mr. Dalton interrupted gently, "the moment you began using trust funds without Jenna's consent." He set a folder on the coffee table in the living room. I followed them in, acutely aware of how many times I'd been summoned to this room to be scolded, corrected, reshaped. Now I sat on the edge of the couch like a guest. "What is this?" Marian asked, fingers trembling slightly. "Bank statements," Mr. Dalton said. "Copies of transfers from Jenna's trust into your joint accounts. Payments for vacations, renovations, charitable events connected to Mr. Rowe's company. All without Jenna's signature." Marian went pale. Thomas's face darkened. "We are her parents. We've always handled her finances." "But it wasn't yours to handle," Mr. Dalton replied. "Under the hardship clause Simon Avery included, full control of the trust is now transferred to Jenna. Effective immediately. You no longer have legal access." The words settled in the room like dust after an explosion. "You can't do that," Marian whispered. "He wouldn't do that to us." "He didn't," I said quietly. "He did it for me." Thomas stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're tearing this family apart over some paperwork." "Over theft," Mr. Dalton corrected. "Misuse of a trust is financial abuse. The court takes it seriously." Footsteps thundered on the stairs. Caleb appeared, phone in hand, expression twisted with anger. "What is this? Mom says you're trying to steal your own trust. That doesn't even make sense." I looked at him. My brother. The golden boy. The one they raised to believe everything would always be handed to him, even me. "You used that card for your tuition," I said. "The one linked to the family account?" "That wasn't Dad's money. It was mine." He blinked, anger giving way to confusion. "Dad said." "I know what Dad said." I straightened, the old instinct to shrink finally loosening its grip on my spine. "He's been saying it my whole life." Marian tried again, her voice slipping into the soft, broken register that had manipulated entire rooms. "Honey, listen to yourself. Lawyers, accusations, restraining orders. We're family. We can fix this. Don't destroy us over money." My eyes stung, but I didn't look away. "This was never about money to you. It was about control. About keeping me useful, not equal." Thomas slammed his hand against the back of the chair. "You're ungrateful. After everything we've done for you." I cut him off, something inside me finally snapping clean. "What you've done to me." The room went silent. Mr. Dalton slid another document forward. "This is a temporary restraining order, granted this morning. You are not to contact Jenna directly or indirectly outside of legal channels. Any violation will be reported to the court." Marianne's hand started to shake. Thomas sank into his armchair like someone had pulled the beams out from under his foundation. "You did this to us," he said hoarsely, eyes locked on mine. For the first time in my life, his disappointment didn't crush me. It sounded small. "No," I said. "You did this to yourselves." I stood. My knees didn't buckle. My voice didn't shake. "I came here to say something to your faces so you couldn't twist it later," I continued. I'm done being your backup plan, your safety net, your silent partner in the story you tell this town. Caleb swallowed. So that's it? You're just walking away. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a monster but a boy who'd been taught that love meant ownership and loyalty meant silence. Yes, I said. I am. I turned toward the door. Each step across that living room felt like tearing Velcro off my skin, loud, painful but clean. Mr. Dalton opened the door, then paused. Jenna, Thomas called after me, one last attempt at command. I glanced back. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe once that would have worked. Not anymore. I already regret all the years I stayed, I replied. This is the first decision I don't. The sunlight outside hit my face, warm and unapologetic. As the door clicked shut behind me, their voices rose in muffled panic and anger, but they sounded farther away than they'd ever been, like echoes from another life. Are you all right? Mr. Dalton asked as we walked down the steps. I exhaled, shoulders finally lowering from where they'd lived close to my ears for years. For the first time, I said, I think I might be. He nodded. Your grandfather would be proud. I believed him, because for the first time I was starting to feel proud of myself too. The motel room smelled like stale coffee and cheap soap, but when I walked back into it after leaving my parents' house, it felt like sanctuary. I closed the door softly behind me. No slam, no dramatic exit. The calm was louder than any outburst could have been. For the first time in my life, the silence around me felt clean. Minded, I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding since childhood. My phone vibrated nonstop. Calls from my parents, a handful from Caleb, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I powered it off. Instant peace. Mr. Dalton checked on me twice that evening. He arranged a safe temporary apartment for me on Maple Street, modest, small, and perfect. Mrs. Ellery brought soup and a bag of toiletries, patting my shoulder the same way she handled fragile old books. You're doing something brave, she told me. Most people stay because it's easier to survive the familiar hurt than to risk the unknown. I wasn't sure it was bravery yet. It felt more like exhaustion wearing new clothes. But I nodded anyway. My new apartment had thin walls and a single window that overlooked a cracked parking lot, but it felt like possibility. I slept on a mattress still wrapped in plastic the first night, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Each sound belonged to me. No footsteps pacing, no doors slamming, no whispered criticism seeping under closed doors. The morning light slipped through the blinds in soft stripes, painting the bare walls gold. I made coffee on a cheap machine and sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping slowly. Tasted like a beginning. I opened my laptop and checked my email. Mr. Dalton had sent confirmation. The court has approved emergency activation of the hardship clause. The trust is now legally yours alone. All access from your parents has been revoked. A second email followed. Their attempted withdrawals this morning were blocked. Expect a reaction. A laugh burst out of me before I could stop it. For once, not a bitter one. Just real. Everything they had taken, spent, or laundered under the name of family contribution was now under investigation. The house that gleamed like a postcard was suddenly a crime scene in slow motion. And all I had done was tell the truth. The fallout came within days. A quiet article in the local paper. Prominent business owner under investigation for misuse of family trust funds. No names mentioned, but everyone in town knew. Small towns always do. My father took an indefinite leave of absence from his construction company. My mother canceled her charity brunches. Caleb lost the scholarship he'd bragged about for months when the school caught wind of ongoing family legal issues. They'd spent years building a perfect image. Truth took less than a week to crack it. I didn't smile when I heard. Not exactly, but there was a sense of alignment. Like the world had finally stopped tilting sideways under their illusions. One evening, a week after moving, I sat by my window with a notebook in my lap. I'd always wanted to write, but I'd never had the mental room to do it. My thoughts had always been used up managing their expectations. Now, the words came like water breaking through a dam. At the top of the page I wrote, "The cost of silence." And then I started writing the story. Not theirs, not the version they fed to neighbors, not the polished narrative they crafted at dinner tables. My story. Every line I wrote felt like reclaiming breath. Like sweeping dust off a mirror I hadn't seen myself in for years. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the ink smudged, until the sky outside turned from blue to twilight gray. When I finally stopped, I leaned back against the wall, notebook open on my knees, and let the quiet wrap around me. This was freedom. Not loud, not cinematic, not triumphant. Just steady and real. The kind that grows roots. 2 days later, Mrs. Ellery knocked on my door again, carrying a plant. "Something alive," she said. "For your new start." I placed it by the window, where the sunlight touched it gently. "When do you think it'll stop hurting?" I asked her. She didn't rush to answer. Instead, she sat beside me, hands folded in her lap. "When the pain stops being a weight," she said softly, "and starts being direction." I didn't understand at first. But later that night, lying awake in the dark, it hit me. My pain wasn't just what they did to me. It was what I finally walked away from. What I refused to carry anymore. The real final moment of closure came unexpectedly. My phone buzzed with an email from Mr. Dalton. "Final determination complete. You have full, uncontested ownership of the trust. All unauthorized spending is classified as parental misuse. You owe them nothing." Nothing. I read that word 3 times. For years I'd felt like I owed them everything. My time, my silence, my obedience, my future. And now, in one crisp legal sentence, I owed them nothing. I closed my laptop, stood in the middle of my small living room, and let myself breathe. Really breathe. Slow. Deep. Unapologetic. I poured myself a glass of cheap sparkling water, held it up toward the window where the city lights flickered like quiet witnesses, and whispered, "To freedom." Not revenge. Freedom. Because revenge had never been the point. Revenge was the explosion. Freedom was what came after the dust settled. I thought about the night in the backyard, about the BMW toast, about the slap that knocked the air from my lungs. I thought about the girl I was then, quiet, obedient, so desperate for peace she settled for pain. I wasn't her anymore. I didn't hate my family. Hate is still a tether. And I had finally cut mine. What I felt now was something cleaner. Like stepping out of a house that had been burning for years and finally realizing I had permission to walk away. I opened the window, letting the night air in, cool and sharp. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked, a dog barked, life moved. "Freedom feels quiet," I whispered. "Quiet and safe." They raised their glasses to my obedience. Now I raised mine to my freedom. If you've ever been pushed into silence, remember this. Your silence is not their property. Speak. Walk. Rebuild. Even if your voice shakes. And if my story sounds like yours, tell yours too. Someone out there needs to know it's possible.